Hello and welcome to Diversity, a show brought to you by the East Hampton Town Anti-Bias Task Force. Today, we're taking you, the audience, to a place that hopefully you're not too familiar with. We're taking you to jail. We are here with two guests. We have Natalie and we have Mateo, and they are my guests today. I'm Andrew Visconti, and we are going to be talking about jail because I understand that Natalie, you're a high school student in East Hampton, and I understand that you've been on a field trip to a jail.
So this past January, we went to Riverhead jail, and we did a kind of tour around, so.
Okay, what did you think? Was it what you expected? What did you expect to begin with?
Well, going into it, I think everybody has their own, ideas of what jail is. There's a kind of mutual understanding of what it is. It's not, considered a great place to be in, but when I went there, it was a lot different than what I thought it would be.
How so?
I don't know, it was a lot more realistic. Like, the idea of jail is so far away in a lot of people's minds, and being there in real life was kind of a shock.
Mateo, we're having this conversation on August 28th. A year ago, in fact, a year and a few days ago, what was your life like around August 15th, August 20th?
Well, my life a year ago today was very different. I was partying a lot. I was staying out in the street till like 3 in the morning, just doing bad things, beating people up, mostly doing drugs. But on August 25th, that all changed when I got incarcerated because me and a couple of friends of mine, we beat someone up and that person almost died. So we all had to go to jail. A year ago today, right now I'd say I was in a jail cell, just confused, not knowing what was happening.
Did you ever think, growing up, did you ever think you would end up in jail?
No, I didn't. I didn't take it serious because at the time I thought, since I'm a minor, I'm not gonna go to jail. And I was even on probation, but I never took it serious. I always violated it. I didn't really take anything that had to do with the law serious until I went to jail.
Natalie, you met some people in jail. You had conversations with, I believe, female inmates. What was the interaction like?
It was a little bit sad, I would say, because a lot of the inmates had serious drug addictions, and that was like a very popular theme, and it was like most of them knew within themselves that they weren't ready to get better, so they knew that once they would get out, they would just continue that cycle.
Mateo, during your time in jail, without mentioning last names, maybe only first names, you dealt with other kids your age, other minors. Are drugs a big reason that made them land in jail?
No, mostly gun violence, but it was never drugs.
And gun violence, because you live in Mid-Island, where I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there is the issue of gangs that
Yes,
sometimes.
it's a big issue there.
How so? How big an issue is it?
A lot of gangs would have like shootouts. Most gangs would fight over territory. Some gangs would, engage in drug selling, and let's just say one gang is in the territory selling drugs. That's not good, and then the whole fight is gonna happen. A lot of brawls happened a lot too. Mostly in Pilgrim Psychiatric Center. It was a very dangerous spot at that time because a lot of dead bodies would end up there, mostly due to MS-13. But definitely, gang violence was also a big reason why most minors would end up there.
Natalie, do you feel that this area, the kids you interact with at
Mhm.
the East End High School, it's sort of a safe area where those are issues that are millions of miles away?
It really feels like though like I don't know how to put it, but out here it feels a lot safer and those issues seem very far away and not they almost don't feel real because
Do you feel that?
sorry.
No, I get it. I get it. They don't feel real because Mateo and I just spent a couple of hours driving around and familiarizing Mateo with the area. And Mateo was saying very different than Mid-Island, and not necessarily better or worse, just
Mhm.
very different. Um, have you ever known anyone who's been in jail?
Um, I don't personally know anyone who has been to jail. I know people who've been on probation, but it's very rare out here for people to go to jail or juvie, especially if they're a teenager.
Speaking of juvie, Mateo wrote a wonderful piece that was published in the East Hampton Star a few weeks ago during the summer. I think we have a screenshot of the article, the headline, 17 and in Lockup. It's a wonderful story, very thought-provoking, very introspective, where Mateo, basically you point out the things you've learned in jail and how, in a way, it was good for you to change your life around. But there is one particular sentence that really stayed with me when Mateo said that he was sent upstate to a juvenile facility and said life was easy there. You know, I could take walks out on the fields and we would play video games and there were television shows on demand. So life is easy. And Mateo, you wrote, that's why kids end up there again and again.
It definitely is. I'd say because when I went upstate, I was expecting it to be just like the county jail here in Yaphank. I thought, corrections officers, the food was, bad, commissary, all that. But when I went upstate, I was mind blown because it's like when you're in summer camp, except you obviously don't go home. But it's weird because when I first got there and I was waiting to get breakfast, I thought I was just gonna get what I usually got in here in Yaphank, just dry cereal with milk. But they gave you fluffy waffles with a muffin with cereal, and I was so shocked because I was like I was not expecting that. And then throughout the day, you go to I forgot the name of it, but you go to this room where there's a TV with regular on-demand channels, and it's different because in Yaphank you only have 23 channels. You gotta watch all those channels for pretty much until you leave. And there it's weird because there's a TV, there's a PlayStation 4 where you could play games like Mortal Kombat, NBA 2K22, like every type of game you could play in there. Kids get to have these MP3 players where they could listen to music. And it's not even just that, like kids even get to eat outside food on the weekends. Like I remember one day, like the last time I was there, we all got Chinese food. And I was just shocked, and kids that behave good on Wednesdays they get any type of outside food they want, Burger King, McDonald's, Cows, anything they want. So it's definitely a different world, and it made me see that a lot of the kids there they were really disrespectful to the staff. They didn't take them serious. They would always be rude. They would never like respect them. Like for example, if you disrespect the CO, corrections officer here, the CO is gonna probably lock you in your cell, and you're gonna get a write up, and that's not good because then it goes to your judge, and then the judge is gonna get mad at you or do some type of legal action against you for misbehaving. But it definitely is, and it makes me really realize why a lot of kids some of them spend their whole lives coming in and out because they don't know what it's really like to suffer. In JDC, I'd say it's like a vacation room. It's not actually jail, and I didn't get to experience what jail was really like because I was a minor, but just being in the pod I was in was enough. It was hard enough. A lot of nights I'd have to starve till the morning. and mostly till 11 o'clock because the breakfast was always bad. In JDC in Albany, you were never hungry. You could eat 3 plates if you want. In jail, you can't do that. You only get 1 plate and that's it. If you have commissary, you're good. If you don't, then you're starving until tomorrow.
I have a follow-up question, but Natalie, I'm going to prepare you. I would like you to think of a question for Mateo and take your time because first I have a question for him. So in the story in the East Hampton Star, Mateo, you wrote 2 words that at first the sheriff's department didn't like because you wrote the food was nasty. And their reaction was like, we don't want him to say that. And I said, what, do you want the general population to hear that they get gourmet food in jail? And they said, good point, yeah, then nasty is okay. Also because nasty is an opinion, it's not a fact. But now tell us, what is the nasty food in jail?
Food there, I mean, there were some days where it was exceptional. Some days it's like, all right, this isn't that bad, but it has to do with getting used to the food. For example, when my first week in jail, I didn't eat at all. The only thing I ate was an apple. That's it, all day, until eventually I started getting familiar with the food and I started eating it. But the thing about the food is that they have a nutritionist from the state come down and analyze the food. So it's not up to them. It's pretty much up to the state is the one who decides like what inmates are gonna eat. So the person looks at the food and they're like, okay, this is exceptional. This is what they're gonna have. And the bad thing about their food too is that they give you very little amounts of food. Like there was times where only a spoon, like what is a spoon is what you have to eat. Only 1 scoop of the spoon that you eat, that's all you have. They give you very little amounts of food because I don't know if it's because like they want you to buy commissary, but whatever it is, sometimes it would just be like depressing, like the food comes in and you waited a long day for it and then it's disgusting. But then you're like, damn, I got nothing to eat now, but that's why you got to get commissary. But there was minors there who didn't have commissary and they'd have to literally wait till the next day to be able to get something that they wanted to eat. But most of the time I'd share my commissary because, I feel bad, that's messed up having to starve. That's not right.
Right. Mateo, please be ready to ask Natalie a question. Natalie, can you think of a question that something that you're curious about you would like to ask Mateo?
So I would ask, how did you get through your time? Like, what did you kind of tell yourself or do to pass the time?
What I usually did was I read a lot of books. I watched TV. I played chess. I played like poker and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I played basketball. And what I would do to just get the time by and like, not stress is I'd just be like, in a year from now, I'm not going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
At first it was hard though because I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I thought I was going to be there for years, 5, because that's what I was going to get. I was going to get 5 years upstate. But once I found out, okay, I'm gonna leave on April, that's when it got easy, It's just some days I'd wake up sad because I want it to happen now, but I would just try to enjoy as much as I could, whatever I had, just find any single type of way to be entertained throughout the day.
I actually have a follow-up question to Natalie's question. One of the activities in jail is you have some instructors or providers that bring different programs, including the program that I bring every week. I go to Yaphank, and it is a program for adults and for minors. It's a writing program. You are a gifted writer. This story is one of the examples, but you've written other very beautiful stories. A great story you wrote was you are very fond of your fish tank that you bought with the money that you made recently with the first job you got out of jail. And you wrote a story where basically you compared the pod where the miners are with the fish tank, with the fish sort of moving around aimlessly, swimming around aimlessly, just a little bit like the miners there. Did you know that you had a propensity for writing, or was jail a moment to calm down and start appreciating things that you were not familiar with?
I always liked writing, and it's weird because the day I started writing was I had this old notebook from like 7th grade, and at the time I was smoking weed, and then I was high, and then I got curious. I was like, let me write like my thoughts, and then I wrote in cursive, but I sucked at first because I always knew how to write cursive, but I was bad at it. But I kept trying until like I eventually got the point of it, and I used to write like nothing. I always wrote what I would do throughout the day. I would write what I want to do, like, with my future. And I know I write good, but and it's like I don't try. I never try writing. I just write whatever I want to. And like, if I'm making a story, I just write based on like what I think it sounds good. But I just naturally liked writing. I always did. But when I was in jail, it made me like writing even more because it kept me entertained a lot. It was like a stress reliever. I always write, I'm gonna do this when I get out of jail. I'm gonna do that. I'm working insurance with my dad. I'm gonna do everything. So writing definitely helped me a lot, and it definitely was something I always liked.
Is there something that you are interested in asking Natalie about her experience visiting jail? So you obviously have an inside view of jail, and Natalie was there how many hours?
I would say 4 or 5. I'm not
Right, so
entirely sure.
obviously a very different experience. Any particular questions that you have for Natalie?
Since I never went to Riverhead, like how did it look inside of there?
Um, well, I don't want to speak too like negatively about it, but it definitely wasn't. Um, it didn't look like a great place to be. It was a lot more. Well, before we went, we did like um, assignments on different jails and what they looked like and kind of how they worked and stuff. And Riverhead was definitely one of the more intense jails. I'm not sure, is it medium security
It's
or
maximum.
It's maximum security.
yeah, it was tough, and especially because the officers who worked there, the whole point of the program was to like instill fear in us, kind of, so that we wouldn't, after going on the field trip, we would be like especially scared to go back. And they did a good job of it. It was very, like the inmates, everyone kind of took part in it and tried to scare us off, I guess. But
What do you think was the biggest surprise for you those 5 hours?
well, I was surprised at being yelled at. Like we were being kind of screamed at by the inmates as we were walking along, but I think more than half of them were participating in the program. I don't remember what the program's name is, but they were kind of yelling at us to stay out of jail and to look at them and see where they are and to not do what they did, basically.
Speaking of which, Mateo, you're determined never to go back.
Yes.
How do you keep on the right path?
I follow the law. I don't violate my probation. I stay away from the streets. I stay home the majority of the time. There was something that a gym trainer that I knew at the gym I go to taught me because he actually went to prison himself, and I became like close to him and I talked to him a lot. He always told me that it's never good to be going to the street late at night. You never know what you're gonna get yourself into, and it's always trouble. And I changed a lot of my ways because back then what I would do is I'd stay home like all day, sleep all day, and then when like the sun goes down and like it's nighttime, that's when I go out, drive around, listen to music, go to like abandoned asylums, like, do a lot of like not bad things, but like things that a teenager shouldn't be doing. But I've definitely changed a lot, and what I dedicate my life to now is just working, going home, and just playing video games and going to the gym, and that's it. I don't do no more drugs. I don't smoke weed. I don't do none of that. I changed a lot.
Natalie, you are sitting next to someone who spent 8 months in jail. Is that the image of an inmate?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I think that's a tough question because um, I wouldn't like necessarily say, oh, this person looks like an inmate, but um, I don't know. I think it's an experience, and the fact that you went through that and that you can come out of it and say that you want to better yourself is really great.
Yes. Not only that, but I feel, Mateo, from how I got to know you, that you really feel that you've matured in jail. First of all, you spent a crucial year of your life, 17. You had your birthday in jail,
Yes, I
right?
did.
How did that feel?
It was depressing, because when I was in jail at that time, I looked back at my 16th birthday. I was home with my friends, partying, and just celebrating my life. And then a year later, I'm in a jail cell, just waking up, quiet, the same stuff. Just it was depressing. It was horrible. Like I didn't cry or nothing because I cried so much throughout like that moment of my life that I stopped. I was basically like emotionless to everything. I would just always be quiet, and just think about everything that happened, and I just pray for better days. My birthday, like my family visited me, and I didn't even feel right. I walked out of the visiting room very sad because it's like I wish I could celebrate it with them, because I know the pain I'm feeling, they're feeling as well. But unfortunately, it was too late, and I gotta accept my consequences. But I just the whole time throughout my birthday, I just prayed for better days, and I just hoped that my next birthday would be better. The minors while I was there, they try to make me feel like happier. Like you like cheer up, it's your birthday. Try to just stay motivated. We know it's hard, but we know you're gonna get out of this. And thank God I'm here. And luckily, I got through all of it.
Natalie, the field trip to jail, was that a choice? Was it mandatory? How did it happen that you got either selected or sent there?
Well, at this point in time, I was taking a criminal law class, and um, the field trip was offered, but if you if you didn't do the field trip, then you would have to do kind of a presentation on the jails. So most people wanted to see the jail anyway and um, see what it was like because it was kind of a cool opportunity.
And it basically reinforced the idea that a jail,
Hmm.
it's not just something you watch on television, it's the
Yeah,
real place.
yeah, it was definitely um, shocking to kind of see it in person because talking about jail, it seems so far away and like it could never happen to you or anyone you know, and then all of a sudden, um, like things can happen.
Mateo, April 25th, you went in front of a judge, and the judge pointed out three things at you. What did he or she say?
Well, the judge was Judge
Don't
Anthony
mention the
Sam.
name.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
The judge, I walked in, shackled down in handcuffs, and he told me, Mateo David, agreeing to sentence you to 8 months time served with an additional 5 years of felony probation. However, there are three conditions you must follow so I can know to release you. And I was like, okay. And then he said, my first condition is that you will follow up on random drug tests on your probation. My second condition is that you will not commit another felony or any sort of crime within Long Island or the state of New York. And do you realize that if you fail any of my conditions, I will personally take your case again and I will sentence you double what your original sentence was, which is 10 years upstate in prison? And I was like, yes, Your Honor, I do. And then he said, with that being said, I hereby sentence you to 8 months with 5 years probation, and you are to report to the probation office upon your release. And I said, okay, thank you. And he also mentioned that I got sentenced, he actually told me that if there's anything I want to say before he sentences me. And I told him, yes, Your Honor, I want to say that I've changed a lot throughout these months of my life, and I'm aware of the mistake I made. And being in jail made me a better person and made me realize that my life is ahead of me and I can't ruin it. And I promised him that I'm not going to come back and I'm doing everything right. And I thanked him from the bottom of my heart for the second opportunity he gave me because I was facing 5 years of my life upstate. And thankfully, with my lawyer and also the judge, he granted me just 8 months and 5 years probation since it was my first crime committed.
Natalie, what do you feel you're learning from this conversation today?
Well, I feel like I'm learning a little bit more about what it was like because I haven't really had a sit down conversation like this before about this. And I think it's really interesting in the way that you've kind of turned it around, spun it, and made it work for you is really admirable.
Is it uncomfortable to talk about the 8 months in jail? Would you prefer to ignore that those 8 months ever happened?
It's not uncomfortable at all. I like talking about it because it's something that I guess you could say scarred me for the rest of my life. I mean, I actually have a mark, I have a scar from the shackles on my legs that pretty much like I look at it every time and I just remind myself I can't go back. And at the same time, like it was it was a beautiful experience for me in a way because there's this line that I always went by that there's beauty in the struggle because it really is because I changed, you know, it made me someone better. It's something that I mandatorily needed for my life because I knew that the way I was going in life, I was gonna end up probably dead or in jail. But since I was a minor, that helped me out a lot with my case. But it's something that I could talk about for hours, you know, from how it was when I first got into when I got out.
Well, you will not talk about this for hours, but we will continue this conversation with another guest. And I want to thank both of you for your time, your insight. And I think that it's helpful for the public to hear what it's like to visit a jail and how it impacts you. And you guys were really wonderful in giving us that sense. Thank you.
No, thank you.